Now you could go more into depth on these three views, but I'll tell you what, I am a futurist in this sense, and I'll tell you two passages from the Old Testament and that I hold a futurist view on, because I could argue that I don't think they've ever been fulfilled in all of history. One of them is in Isaiah chapter 17. Isaiah 17 begins by talking about how it says, Damascus will cease to be a city. It will be so ruined and so desolated that it will cease to be a city. And what's so interesting about Damascus, if you go there, is that it is one of the oldest cities in the world.
Well, hello. Welcome to Whitefield's Sermon Extra, Whitefield's Community Church Sermon Extra, where we actually have a little bit more time to talk about things that sometimes we just don't have the time to talk about in the format of Sunday morning. And so if you like what you hear, make sure that you hit that like button, smash that like button, actually. Hit it a lot.
Yeah, a bunch.
Just
but not too many, because, if you hit it too many times, you might unlike it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So only hit it once, because if you hit it
an odd number of times.
Odd number of times, that's good. Even number of times, you're unliking. So that's really good. That's a good thing you brought that up. That's why he's the lead pastor. My name is Jason. This is Pastor Nick, and we are pastors here at Whitefield's Community Church. And so there's a lot going on actually in the world around us, and it may come up amongst some people that attend our church that may be listening. Why aren't we talking more about, for example, Israel and Hamas, the war that's going on? Why aren't we bringing that up in sermons? So that's really what we want to talk about today. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so that's why we have this format here. We absolutely want to talk about things that are going on in the world and give a biblical and Christian perspective on them and give our church's take on them and us as pastors and stuff. So why don't we do it in sermons on Sunday? I'll tell you why. Sometimes there is a good place for doing that. And I think this situation might be one of those, but we already had our sermon series planned out. And one of the things that I am really sensitive about is that I don't want to be hijacking Sunday morning to talk about whatever's going on in the world. We need to find other ways to talk about that as a church. And so this is a good format for something like that. I just think back to this idea that, if you're always going after like what's going on in the world, it can be kind of a thing where, I've heard people say, well, I'm going to scrap what I was planning to teach about, in our series studying through a book of the Bible, for example, in order to talk about something that's going on in the world right now. Again, it is important to teach us how to think biblically, but I'll tell you this, I think the best thing we can do as Christians is to have a steady diet of studying the Word of God and in an expository way. So expository means that we're just taking the text and wanting to expose its meaning for us. And I'll tell you what that does. It causes us to think biblically about not just this current event that's taking place, whatever that event might be, but about everything in life, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to teach us something that may not be what we feel is immediately urgent, but it is what is necessary over time. Sometimes we talk about the difference between important versus urgent. Sometimes the things that are urgent are not the long-term important things. Sometimes the things that are important are not urgent. And yet if we neglect the important because it's not urgent, I think we'll be doing ourselves a disservice. So that's why we like to teach through books of the Bible. That's why we teach in an expository way, is because by doing so, we're allowing God to teach us on his terms to think biblically about all of life. Now, again, like I said, there are times when it would be right to address something from the pulpit, and I think this could qualify as one of those. We've just been in a sermon series that was planned out beforehand. We planned these things out way ahead of time, and now we're moving into another one with Jude and then Matthew, and perhaps some of these issues will come up, but we want to take today to just talk about this particular issue because I think it is worth talking about, which is the current situation with Israel and Hamas. Does the Bible have anything to say about it? How do we think and pray biblically about these things? So I think the first thing we want to say is that this terror attack on Israel by Hamas must be just condemned. Like, this is absolutely wrong.
Right.
There's nothing okay about what happened. And I think that that's just something that needs to be stated. Like, yeah, killing civilians is not okay. And this is a terror attack, and we want to be praying for the peace of Israel. Now, I want to say two things about this from a prophetic standpoint. Now, there are three views on the prophetic passages in the Bible, and these views can be disseminated in this way. And we talked about this, by the way, in our eschatology class, which we did last winter in the Bible Learning Center. But here's what it comes down to. There are three ways, or frameworks, if you will, for looking at the prophetic passages in the Bible. Those are called futurism, preterism, and idealism. And what that means is basically this. A futurist take on the Bible's prophecies says that there are prophecies, and this is usually used particularly in regard to Revelation, but it's not only in regard to Revelation, that there are prophecies in the Bible which are yet to have been fulfilled. So that's called futurism.
Right.
The next one is called preterism. Now, preterism kind of goes on a spectrum between partial preterism to full preterism. And in some ways, you could say, okay, well, preterists are essentially saying that primarily Revelation, but also some passages in the Gospels called the Olivet Discourse, and some passages in the Old Testament, which futurists take as future, meaning they have not yet been fulfilled in our date and time. They say those things have already been fulfilled. That's preterism. Mm-hmm. And again, I want to portray that correctly and fairly, because some preterists would say, no, I'm a partial preterist, which means I believe that most of them have taken place, but not all of them. To some people who say, no, I actually believe even the return of Jesus, that's a full preterist view, even the return of Jesus has taken place. Now, I do not hold that view, and I actually consider that view to be in contradiction to the earliest Christian creeds, which talk about the future return of Jesus. And so, and then you have idealism, which says that primarily Revelation, but also other passages in the Bible as referenced, don't necessarily speak of a future thing, nor of an event that has already been fulfilled in the past, but it speaks of the cyclical nature of the war, if you will, the war between good and evil that will take place in all generations until the return of Jesus. Now, you could go more into depth on these three views, but I'll tell you what, I am a futurist in this sense, and I'll tell you two passages from the Old Testament and that I hold a futurist view on, because I could argue that I don't think they've ever been fulfilled in all of history. One of them is in Isaiah chapter 17. Isaiah 17 begins by talking about how it says, Damascus will cease to be a city. It will be so ruined and so desolated that it will cease to be a city. And what's so interesting about Damascus, if you go there, is that it is one of the oldest cities in the world, and it has not ceased to be a city since biblical times.
Yeah, very old city.
Yeah, very old city. You know, interestingly, if you say it's the oldest city in the world, some people argue that Jericho in Israel is the oldest city in the world. I was there last year, almost this time of year, and they make a pretty good case for it, you know, and really interesting. In fact, if you go there with us someday, you can actually see the walls of Jericho that fell down in the time of Joshua, the remains of them, some stones from them at least. So it's quite interesting, but Damascus is up there with one of these cities that has existed from biblical times and has been continually inhabited up until the modern day. And so that's one where we would say Damascus has never become a ruin to the point where it ceased to be inhabited. And so therefore, if that prophecy has not yet been fulfilled in the past, we would say it's a future prophecy.
Right.
So when it comes to Israel and Hamas, I think that's where I would be keeping my eye out prophetically is, okay, what's Syria's role in this whole thing? And I found it really interesting when Israel started bombing the Syrian airports. You know, they were trying to send in help from Iran that was going to be, you know, navigated towards Hamas and Hezbollah. And the Israeli military shot out their airport. Now, the airport is way outside of the city, so this isn't exactly a fulfillment of that prophecy by any means. But it's something to keep an eye on, because if this turns into a much more large-scale regional conflict, If Syria gets involved, if Syria aligns themselves with Iran, they're already aligned with Russia, then I think that that's something to keep an eye out for prophetically. That prophecy in Isaiah 17 that Damascus will become a ruin and cease to be a city. The other one to watch out for is, and kind of keep your mind on, is in Ezekiel 38, where it talks about this conglomeration of powers from the north and from the east that will come and attack Israel. And I think that we are in a position right now where that could possibly take place with Iran, Russia, Syria, and even like Turkey has gotten involved in saying some things. So we'll see what happens with that. But those are the two prophecies that I would say are worth keeping an eye on or keeping in the back of your mind as you watch the situation in Israel play out and develop. So beyond that, I would say that we want to be praying for the peace of Israel. We want to be praying for that. The Bible talks about how in the end times, towards the return of Jesus, that there will be a great turning of the nation of Israel to receive faith in Jesus. This is found in Romans chapter 11. Yeah. And so, he says there in Romans 11, has God cast off his people Israel? And he says, by no means. Right? And so we, the church, have been grafted in as a wild branch, it says, but that main tree, which is it's actually a metaphor that's used for Israel often, is that of the vine, the grapevine, is used as a metaphor throughout the Old Testament. And so it's this idea that we've been grafted in, and yet God hasn't written off his people Israel. He still has future plans for them. So those are the things that I would keep in mind. And I'll just finally end with saying this, that anytime when we read about eschatology, this is something I said in the eschatology class too, that means the study of the end times. If your eschatology causes you to be afraid, if it causes you to be fearful, if it causes you to be desperate, or if it causes you to consider shooting your neighbors, for example, then I think you really need to question your eschatology.
Yeah,
because I think that our eschatology, we read in 1 Thessalonians, we're told, comfort each other with these words, right? That Jesus is coming back for the church. Comfort each other with these words. In other words, when we think, hey, look, are we in the end times? What should be the results of that? We should say, well, maybe we are, and actually technically, yes, we are, according to Acts chapter 2. Since that time, we have been in the end times. Now, the end times might be longer than some people would have hoped, right? Or expected.
Yeah.
But we are in the end times, and what should that cause us to do? Well, Matthew 25 actually tells us what it should cause us to do if the time of Jesus' return is near. And what it says is that we should be busy, so we should be ready. And what does it mean to be ready? It means to be busy about the Lord's work. And Jesus tells that parable there of the talents, which a talent is a denomination of money. It's a large denomination of money. It says that a king went away, right? He's talking about, his ascension. The king went away, and then he's going to come back. That's the return of Jesus. And what were the people who were entrusted with his resources to do in the time that he was away? Well, some of them invested it, and they created a return on the investment. Other people hid it. One man hid it in the ground because he said, I knew that you are a hard man, and I was afraid that you would be mad at me if I lost it. And that's the one that Jesus is actually the most upset with, is the person who didn't take what they were given and seek to turn it into more. And what does that mean for us? It means Jesus is coming back at some point. It could be this afternoon, it could be tomorrow, and it could be further out than that. But here's the thing. What should we be doing while we wait? Should we be scared? No. We should be on the offense rather than on the defense. Rather than scared and hiding, we are to be going out knowing that the time is short, that there's an urgency to the gospel, and that God desires for people to hear the gospel and come to him, as we saw in our last study in Isaiah 55. So all that to say, if your eschatology makes you scared, I don't think that needs to be questioned, because it says in 1 Thessalonians, comfort each other with these words, encourage each other with these words that Jesus is coming back. So our redemption is closer now than it has ever been before. And the return of Jesus is closer now than it has ever been before. And we should say with the early church, Maranatha, which means come quickly, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you are looking at these situations that come up with a biblical lens instead of, a lot of people, I think, look at it through fear, look at it through politics, look at it through, the lens of war and what's going to happen with the news and all these different things. But you pause, you look at it through a biblical lens. Here's what the Bible shows about these situations. And it shows that we should have hope. Mm-hmm. It shows that we should have hope in the promises that are promised, and we should be busy spreading the word of the Lord. Because if time is coming soon, as the Bible says, Lord is coming back soon, then we should be busy, busy, busy.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for those wise words. They're hopeful words. And if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section. We'd love to respond to you, love to find out where your heart is on this topic. And if you ever need anyone to talk to or write to us, you can leave it in the comments, or you can email us info@whitefieldschurch.com. So make sure that you subscribe and smash that like button, and even an odd number of times. And we will see you next week.